Hello everyone, my name is Ilya and I'm working for Badoo. I'm really happy to stay here after 7 years of experience of using Zabbix. All of my presentations before were in Russian at Zabbix Moscow meetups, which I've been leading for 3 years in a row. I feel ready to share some knowledge with international community. Some of us probably may know me from my tool, Zabbix and Telegram, which I've been developing for a couple of years. And today I'm going to show you how we succeeded a case in Badoo, which helped us to monitor a lot of application and user activity metrics. What is Badoo? Badoo is the largest dating platform which runs on a website, a lot of mobile applications, and they're all spread around the world in 5 data centers. We have more than 300 million users and more than 200 developers developing features and releases them 2 times a day. And we have only one monitoring team which do pretty common things. We detect problems, we escalate them to a person who is responsible for those problems, and they are fixing them. And also we are supporting Zabbix because Zabbix is a tool which monitors everything for us. We don't store statistics in Zabbix because we have a big and pretty scale thing that helps us to store everything which developers need to store for business analytics. But Zabbix helps us to achieve, that's us. Zabbix helps us to achieve pretty quick, to detect pretty quick anomalies. For example, starting with unavailability of simple services such as CMP pings or TCP connections to some complex user activities such as registrations, online users, messages, and so on. I think that everyone somewhere tried to use Zabbix not only for hardware or network equipment monitoring, but for applications or something bigger and complex. And when do you need your things to be monitored? First, it's when you thought, and you are responsible, you thought before putting something into production that you need to monitor it and you need to cover it with a lot of triggers. And second, when you're not so responsible, but you face the problem and you need to add those things into your monitoring system. Both ways probably are fine for some startups, not enterprises. And we do both of them. In each case, our team is responsible to implement something to Zabbix and to escalate that problem to some responsible person. But we have 2 ways of informing. First way is our operation team. They're only 1-2 as us. And they're fixing ongoing problems with hardware, with daemons, services, and so on. But they have only one responsible guy who is on call 24 hours, and we can reach them every time we need to fix something, we can simply change it into Zabbix, and it would be fine for us because we don't need to change a lot of things. We can simply change, I don't know, severity or threshold or link into documentation. And the second way of informing someone is our developers. And it's a pain for us because there are too many of them, more than 200 as I said. And they have a lot of different applications with different logic, different amount of metrics, different severities. Some of them are critical, some of them not. And we need to support them, we need to store information into Zabbix, probably write some documentation in our wiki system, and I'm going to tell you how we achieved quick work with our developers. So how it was started a lot of years ago. We're using Zabbix from 2009, and after a couple of years we decided that we can use it not only for hardware or network, we can use it for applications. So we created, probably at first it was user parameters, but then in 2.0 or even before it was implemented system runs, and we use it a lot because it's simple to describe how we monitoring something. So when we got a task to develop to monitor something, we developed a code which is monitoring something, and every time we did so, we needed to collect some metrics. We needed to discover what we should add as triggers. We should create severities for them, and after that we needed to support them, fixing flappings, severities, updating responsible guys because they're leaving their jobs or probably moving from department to department, and we had a lot of new guys in 1 year, and we needed to fix a lot of triggers with a lot of actions. And every time it's clicking, and probably if you implemented something into Zabbix, real complex thing which you developed in your company, probably you were clicking. Can someone raise hands who is clicking all the time in Zabbix? Not so many of us. So we did that, and we got into routine, because when you are doing something repeatedly, it's becoming not so interesting for us, and the tasks becoming too slow for developers and for business needs. And we started to think, what can we do about it? First thing came up is that we have a lot of developers who can develop monitoring code, and we don't need to dig inside the apps. We don't need to collect this information, and we can request some script from them, and they can write it and give it to us. And we did that. We achieved some results, and they created some tasks with some scripts which helped us to monitor that, and we only needed to implement it into Zabbix, create host templates, items, triggers, formulas, severities, media for users, and then notifications. And after that, we needed to do the same thing as of before. It's supporting things such as triggers, flapping, severities, responsible guys, or notifications. It was real pain for us, and once we imagine how can we use something something about it. Once I get a task to monitor, Once we discussed with developers how can we improve our speed, and they requested some admin rights for our interface. It wasn't so secure as from our perspective, and we suggested them to provide another instance of Zabbix which could be used for API. But then they got into Zabbix documentation. They realized that it's too hard for them to understand what it is, because they needed to learn what is host, what is template, what is item, trigger, and so on. And every time when someone joins the team, he should know what is Zabbix and how can implement something into their application. It wasn't so convenient, and we started to think what can be improved more. Once I got a task to monitor a pretty important thing, queue processor, which is storing queues from one application to another, sending queues from one application to another, and it was real big and pretty scale, but it has something in common between every queue. It had identification, name of queue, and some limits which we needed to create threshold for. We created low-level discovery for that and achieved something which we didn't achieve before. We don't need to create new items and triggers for every queue anymore. We need to store only prototype for them, and when someone is creating new queue, it automatically becomes into Zabbix. And it's great. Some developers noticed that we don't need to do something as before. And we started to discuss how can we improve such decision. We have a lot of time before we came up to the final result, but it's not so interesting because probably one or even more year was spent not in so fast speed during some big work, but in the end we got pretty simple JSON, which helped us to monitor almost every application in our production. As you can see, it has identification in low-level discovery, name, responsible person, and phones. Why do we need responsible and phones? You will see a bit later. But we had special item called status, and this status has simple thing, one for warning problem, two for high problem, and three for disaster problem. We had only 3 severities because it's also hard to someone grade their problems into 5 or 6 severities, but 3 are fine because when you are facing something that is not important, it's warning, which can be fixed right now, it's high, and even more critical is disaster. It's easy for developers to understand what it is, and status is helped us to mute something in the end. For example, if something is okay, just for now, we can tell Zabbix that that status is 0 and the triggers goes away. But we had not so easy way of implementing those things into Zabbix because we needed to provide our developers a bit more info about Zabbix, and first thing came up, it's host. We couldn't prove them that they need a host to create something into monitoring system. They thought that it's not so convenient because every time you implement some metric, it's a unique metric and you don't need to store hosts. And when I speak with someone about application monitoring in Zabbix, they'll say that we don't need hosts. But we used hosts in good way, I think, because host shows us what is monitoring using for right now. In that example, we are using, for example, pushopens.dc1 for monitoring opening pushes into one data center, and email clicks.dc2 for monitoring clicks from emails into data center 2. It was described into our documentation, and it was first thing which our developers should provide us. It's hosts. So we're getting data from their code, and they're providing us list of active hosts which we need to add into monitoring. By the way, we created our own internal discovery, which is discovering something from different things. For example, HTTP pages or command lines or even database queries. Second thing is metrics. When someone is creating something, he needed to fill that information in Zabbix. Yeah, about LLD JSON. I showed before that we have only 4 fields in our low-level discovery rule, but it's easy for someone not Zabbix user to understand what it is, because ID, name, and list of responsible persons pretty easy, and they don't need to think about anything as for items or functions or something like that. So it was easy for us. And third, it's data. As far as you know, we can gather some data into Zabbix from pushing or pulling. We chose pushing because we didn't want to use something to collect some data from different sources because they have a lot of statistics. So we created all items in Zabbix sender types and started to wait for updates. And they needed to create lists of items for Zabbix sender. All of items has ID. That was easy for our developers. And items are count, as you can see them into graphs, limits for warning, disaster, and for the high priorities. And yeah, and that's it. And the status for muting or escalating some problem. That's how it looks in Discovery. We simply create script, common script for everyone, and we're running DNS macros, which we discovered before when we get some hosts from our developers. And that's how item prototypes looks like. There are only 5 of them. Count for graphs, visual interpretation, limits, and status. For us, it was easy as well because it was only one prototype, and we didn't need to create templates from time to time when some crazy task is getting into our task manager. And that's how triggers look like. We have template. Yeah, I forgot to mention that we have another field in our array. It's trigger, because every time we create something, developers requested us to change trigger, because some of them didn't understand what it was. Some of other guys requested to change it for human understanding. So it has trigger, list of emails split it with commas, list of phones using for SMS. For example, if we have trigger name too few amount of pushes with the list of responsible those guys and list of phones, our script, media script, it's a common script. I think that you can write it by your own. It split that trigger into 3 things. First, it's trigger name, which can be used in notification or in email notification in subject field. Second is emails. And by the way, we achieved that our script can send only one email, because our guys is communicating in emails. And it's not so convenient for them to receive 3 different mails for 3 different persons when they got some real accident, because they needed to react for that. And every time they saw some problem, they thought that someone can fix that. I can skip that email. In that case, the list of responsible persons see one email, and there is one ticket which could help us in that case, but we implemented our solution, Zabbix next 3126, and third thing is SMS. It's not so hardcore stuff. So, summarizing. After doing what we did, we got what I told you, what we got. So developers helps us to get rid of maintaining some code. They got rid of creating a lot of triggers, a lot of media for users. Yeah, and we got rid of creating users for notifications, because probably some, if we got some new guy in our company, we need to create account, or even if it's creating automatically, it's creating, and we have a lot of users. In that way, we don't need to create someone. We just got email or SMS from triggers. And so yeah, we configured actions only for common thing that trigger, and it fits. It fits. And from technical side, we implemented killer feature for us that we can send something for non-Zabbix users, and even some non-technical guys who never saw Zabbix could receive some notification about some crazy thing going on in our production state. And also we implemented thing when some new guy is not so aware about limitation in Zabbix, and we created a script who is limiting amount of keys. Once we got 10,000 keys into our array, and Zabbix couldn't handle that, and it probably stuck in the process of deleting every one of them. So, and of course we have only one template for every case. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so there is no questions on slide, and maybe some questions from the audience. Yes, just a second.
Yeah, hello. I found that developers create JSON on server side, that on monitoring object, yes?
No, they are not creating JSON. We creating it for. Yeah, they're creating JSON. Sorry.
On server, monitored server, and you get this JSON to Zabbix.
Yeah,
yes?
yeah.
And I found that they create limits, yes?
Yes, they're sending it in our items, because from time to time they need to change it according to some.
And limit its threshold value actually.
What?
Limit in JSON its threshold value.
No, we don't have limits in JSON right now, because it's not so fast to change in Zabbix, because Zabbix should store it into servers, then drop it on disk. But in that case, we receive limits with data, and if something goes wrong with new limits, it could be faster to detect something.
For example, if developer want some complex trigger, how they can implement it in your schema?
Mostly they don't need it. And if someone needs
if someone needs complex trigger based
they can
on
request
many metrics,
they can request it to develop. But
so it's different branch. Not
yeah,
even
yeah.
This
so we covered a lot of metrics, but there are cases when someone can ask to develop something from scratch. But it's not routine. It's, I don't know, regular task for us.
And also, maybe you know that in new version of Grafana, it's possible to create email notification also.
What?
In new version of Grafana, it's possible to create email notifications.
Yeah, I know about it, but we don't use Grafana for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Maybe some new questions from Slido.
Hello. Yes, we have two questions. The first one, you sent one email with multiple recipients. Do you also have the opportunity to group text messages or only individual messages to each phone number?
We have individual messages for SMS and group and one common email for every email recipient.
Thank you. And the second one, why you don't not use tags for so many types of information like phone numbers, mail addresses?
We don't use text.
This is how one of our understood this.
I don't understand the question because
Tags. Tags.
text. Okay. I don't know because we implemented it before. Text appeared in Zabbix, and we didn't change it yet. Maybe someday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? No questions. Thank you very much, Ilya. Thank you.